Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the SD40-2 build that we've been working on really since about a year ago. And this is John sitting with
Dan.
And we have some good news for you. We've talked about this on our podcast, the one that actually is the podcast that comes out on the 15th every month. And we've been talking about it for the past few months, saying that we would eventually end up morphing what was the video podcast that came out on the first of every month into model building start to finish. And it starts with this episode, October 1st. And that way, you don't have to wait around till sometime in the middle of next year to see this locomotive get finished.
Right.
So
hopefully not. Yeah.
Yeah. So welcome to what is officially the first edition or episode of model building start to finish. I realize we're halfway through the project, but that's just the way it timed out for us. So here we are.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do with this thing this time, Dan?
Well, I've been detailing this Athearn Blue Box SD40-2 and done a lot of work on the chassis. I've done a lot of work on the body. As you can see, there's some parts have been replaced. Drilled out the fans. Haven't put the radiator fans on yet because I'm going to wait till after painting for that. But quite a bit's been replaced. All of the major cutting and that kind of stuff is now done.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's almost like round two, going back and doing all the smaller stuff. So for that, I want to go back down to the bottom of the engine and work on the side frames.
Okay.
So I've had the side frames off the model for quite a while. At this point, they're just the stock Athearn side frames. One thing nice about the Athearn truck design is that the side frames are purely cosmetic. They don't have any electrical contacts or anything like that, so you can kind of manipulate them as much as you want without worrying about hurting the mechanism.
That's good.
Yeah. And if you'll notice, they definitely are two different kinds. There's the one where this little thing points that way, and there's the one where this little thing points the other way. And there's two of each. Okay, so this piece goes toward the fuel tank.
Always, huh?
Yeah. So at this point, you've got basically two of each of these, and they're identical. But looking at prototype photos, and I'm modeling Santa Fe number 5126, by the way, in case you're coming into this and haven't seen any of the previous, what we were calling the video podcast, where we've been doing this. I need to basically, the first thing I want to do is mark each of these and assign them a spot on the engine.
Mm-hmm.
Because once I start detailing them, they're going to be unique to that place. So you can't swap one for the other anymore. And so what I usually do is I designate them, like this will be engineer front, this will be engineer rear, and then the other one will be fireman front and fireman rear, going by the which side it's on. You could do left and right if you'd rather. Doesn't matter. You just have to find some way to designate that you'll remember what they are.
I think fireman and engineer makes more sense because left and right depends which direction you're looking at it from.
Right. Okay, so I've used a file. You could really use anything that's sharp. And I've scratched in EF on this one. That stands for engineer front. I scratched ER on this one for engineer rear. And then FR for fireman rear and FF for fireman front. The reason I like to scratch it in is because it won't fall off that way. I mean, once you've scratched it in, and this is on the back, by the way, not the front.
Right.
Yeah.
Guess it's good to mention that.
Yeah. But I want to mark it in a way that's not going to fall off, rub off, or get covered by paint later. So if you scratch it in, it'll be there. The brake cylinders on these trucks have a little bit of a molding seam or something.
Right.
Right on the edge.
Seen that before.
Yeah. So I'm going to sand that off. And all I'm doing is I have some 400 grit sandpaper wrapped around a piece of 040 styrene to use as a sanding block. I'm just going to do this. Usually it doesn't take too much because it's not very deep.
Yeah, but here's a question, though. Because you don't do that with all your trucks, what's the purpose of doing it specifically for these trucks?
Because not all trucks have a molding seam there.
Oh, okay.
These do. And it should be just smooth.
So even if you weren't going to put details on there, you'd still do this?
Yeah.
Okay.
because otherwise it looks like a piece of plastic.
Right.
So then I'll just turn it around and do the other one.
So you're going to do this to all four then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to put brake lines on my trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And the brake line attaches kind of at the end of the cylinder here. And there's a little nub there that I need to cut off, because what I need to do is drill a hole into this.
Oh, that'll be impossible with a nub.
Right. So this thing is right in the way. So I'm going to cut this down, not completely off, but cut it down so that it's flat, and then very carefully drill into it. This is a little tricky.
Just have to be really careful, huh?
Yeah. I don't want to cut too much.
Seems like the cutting and the drilling are both tricky.
Yeah. You want to end up with a little bit of a flat surface.
Uh-huh. That'll guide the drill, right?
It helps. It helps, yeah. And get rid of that little...
Is there some way to put a little tiny dent in it to force the drill into that spot? Or
you could maybe do that with a pin. You can even file it a little if you want. Sometimes what I'll do is just position the drill and then very gingerly get it started.
Yeah.
Once it's started, you can push a little harder.
And what size of a drill bit are you using?
This is a number 78 drill bit.
Okay. Is that the smallest you use usually?
They also have 79s and 80s. I sometimes use the 79s. I don't usually use a number 80 because I find that they break every 5 seconds, at least for me. So I'll just use the 79. This is one of the side frames with a brake line installed. And after looking at prototype photos, I realized that in addition to being bent at the ends, they have a couple of little kinks in them. What I did was I built myself a little bending template. And this is just a piece of 080 thick styrene, which seemed to be about the right size. And as it turns out, this is about 16 scale feet long, end to end. And after looking at photos, best I could determine is that the first kink is about 3 feet from the center, and then the second one is about 4 feet from the center, scale feet.
Right.
So I put some marks there. And this is also rounded on the ends, this little template.
Right, so you're bending, the first step is to bend the wires over the round parts.
Right, so we can go ahead and I'll go through one and we can take a look at it. So I'm using some 010 phosphor bronze wire, by the way. Brass wire would work just as well.
Don't try doing this with a paper clip.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend trying it with stainless steel wire either, even though you can get it in that size, because that makes a good needle for poking your finger. Don't ask me how I know that.
I hear a story behind that comment.
Yeah. Anyway, what I do is I just take my finger and bend this wire around the end right here. And this isn't going to bend it all the way. It's going to want to spring back a little bit, but that's all right.
You got it started though, right? And
I got
the
it
distance
started.
is about right.
Right. And then I'm just going to flip this around. And whoops, came off. I got to hold it. You got to kind of hold it all together with your fingers there. There. Now, I'm going to bend the other end. What I want to try to do, though, is to make sure that the second bend is in the same plane as the first bend.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll have to twist it around, huh?
Right. Otherwise, you'll end up with a crooked brake line, and that's not what you want. So, okay, that one's going straight up and down, looks like. So I want to bend this the same way. Straight around. Like that.
Looks like a pretty decent bend, too.
Yeah. The nice thing about soft wire is if it is a little misaligned, it's fairly easy to fix it.
Okay.
So at this point, we have something that looks like this. And next thing I need to do is to bend that wire a little more. So sometimes you can do this with just your fingers, just by pinching it until I want to end up with both sides more or less parallel. Sometimes it's easier to grab one end with a pair of pliers if it's too springy, and then just kind of there, about like that.
No, it does look like a paper clip, a real small one.
Yeah, and then I'll do the same thing with the other side. There. Now I can cut it. Cut this excess.
Can't see what I'm doing. Step one is done.
Yeah, cut this a little
Or
bit.
pretty much done, right?
Yeah. Okay, so now that I've done the ends, I need to put those little kinks in it. And what I want to do is use these little marks and try to grab it with the pliers right by that mark. And then these bends have to be perpendicular more or less to the other bends. So these are going this way, so these have to be going this way basically. So you're just going to bend this one in a little bit. I can't see if I'm doing this right. Yeah, it's okay. And once I've made the first one, I'll put this back here. Grab this again.
Oh, I see, on the second mark.
Yeah. Right. I try to adjust it until I'm pretty sure it's right on. I want to make these as uniform as possible. And then just bend it like that. And then you've got a little kink. And then you just need to repeat that on the other side. So I've flipped this thing around. I have marks on both sides, so I could have done it on the other side, but I just find it a little more convenient to do it this way. And I'm going to do the exact same thing again. Just grab it at this first mark. Oh. Wait a minute.
Yeah, you want to make sure you get it bent the right way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I was going to say, because getting even this far is a bit of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it is. There we go.
Yeah.
Bend it that way. It's also hard to do on camera because I can't really see this as well as I could if I was just holding it up,
Yeah.
to my face to see it.
Yeah. The point is, though, that each side looks basically the same.
Yeah, you want to produce something that looks more or less even.
Uh-huh.
Because that's how the real one looks. That piece that I just bent was a little bit crooked, so I took it and fixed it with some additional bending, just, but holding it where I could see it better.
Yeah. Little fussing will get you everywhere.
Yeah. Like I said, that's the great thing about soft wire is that you can fix it usually.
Yeah. Even if it's twisted, you can probably twist it as long as you don't twist it too much.
Yeah.
Right?
Within reason, you can fix it. So once these are bent, installation is pretty easy because if you remember, I already drilled holes in the brake cylinders.
Oh, yeah.
So this wire should just fit in one end, and then you bring it around and it should fit in the other end.
So do you have to glue this, or will pressure keep it? Well, hold on. I don't want to mess up any of the high concentration here. I think I answered my own question by watching. Yeah, you could just leave it with tension, couldn't you?
You could, but it'll flop around.
Oh, yeah.
So I am going to glue it with some CA glue. So I just put a little drop of glue on a piece of scrap wire and just put some right in the end where it goes in the cylinder.
Something I'm going to mention here, which I think is pretty amazing. Well, I think it is, only because I could see myself struggling with this and cussing a lot, was that in the process of making all 4 of these brake lines for all 4 trucks, Dan did not cuss once, and he didn't mess up any wire. He just did this 4 times in a row, straight up. I was pretty impressed.
Well, this was maybe one of my better days.
Yeah.
I have cussed making trains, believe me.
Just not this time, I guess.
Just not this time, yeah. Now all the brake lines are finished. Now a few of the side frames require some additional details. So we can add that next. So the fireman's side rear truck is basically finished. I'm not going to add any more detail.
Is that what this one is?
No, this is the fireman's side front truck.
Oh.
This doesn't need too much either, but I am going to drill a small hole because this truck, I want to put a brake chain on it.
Oh, okay.
And the brake chain actually connects with this cylinder here.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a very small hole with a number 78 bit through the little lever thing that sticks up here.
Okay. This ought to be fun. Super tiny. Yeah. Super tiny drill bit.
Yeah, and again, I'm going very slow. Whoops. Can't do this and talk at the same time.
You'll notice he's going very slowly and carefully. Because if you try to go too fast, it'll slip off the edge or whatever, huh? Maybe damage it.
Right. So I've taken a very tiny piece of this same O10 wire that I used to make the brake line and glued it in the little hole that I just drilled.
Yeah, that is so small.
Yeah, it sticks up just a little bit. And the idea is later I will be able to loop one end of the chain around this little stud, and that'll hold it with some glue too. But
yeah, I was going to say, because if you don't glue it, it'll just come off, right?
Yeah, but at least that way it's better than just like trying to glue the chain to here without anything holding it, because I don't think that would be too durable. So this is the rear truck on the engineer side.
Rear engine. I'm trying to keep track as we go, so.
Yeah. And the only thing I need to add to this one is a spare knuckle bracket. And this is actually a pretty easy thing to do. I'm using Details West Part 196, which includes two of these things, which is exactly what we need for this model.
Good.
And there's a little stud on the back of the part, and it glues right in to one of these holes in the sides of the truck.
So you just have to figure out which one?
Right. And I've already determined from looking at photos that it goes in the center hole closest to the fuel tank, which is this end. So I've used some CA glue to glue the part on.
And what is this again? A knuckle spare coupler thing?
It's a spare knuckle bracket, yeah.
Okay.
So if they bust a knuckle on the engine, or I assume one of the freight cars, anything, they could have one readily available. So this is the engineer's side front truck.
Oh, you already put the knuckle thing?
Right. And if you notice in this case, the knuckle is away from the fuel tank.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, looking at photos, that's where it is. So basically, both knuckles are toward the front of the engine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, on this truck, this one also has a speed recorder. And this is where it's really a benefit to pay attention to dates on reference photos.
Yeah.
Because I found a picture of this engine 5126 from, say, 1984, I think. And the speed recorder was actually on the other side, on the fireman's side. Later, in the 90s, which is the time period I'm interested in, it was on the engineer's side.
That's weird.
Yeah, so at some point, Santa Fe must have moved it. Anyway, I've determined that it is on the rearmost axle. So what I need to do is drill out the journal right here, because I'm using a Details West speed recorder, and it fits inside a hole at the end of the axle, so I need to drill this out. I'm using a 1/16 drill, by the way.
1/16 inch? Oh, so this isn't one of those, whatever.
No, this isn't a special drill, but this is about the right size. So once the casting is cleaned up, the Details West part that I have has a little stud on the back that fits into the hole that I drilled.
I see.
And I've put a little dab of CA glue on here too, although it's a pretty tight fit anyway.
Yeah, but you'd want to glue that, I think, right? Because if it's not glued in, it might pop off somewhere and you'll never find it again.
Right. Right. The other thing I try to do, it's got some little rivet detail, so I try to make sure it's lined up so that it's straight before I press it in. So the speed recorder casting is actually two pieces. There's the piece that fits in the side frame, and then there's a smaller piece that fits inside the other piece.
It goes on top of it, right?
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah, I remember that.
And before I glue this on, I'm going to drill a little hole in it so I can put a wire on it to represent the cable that goes from the speed recorder up into the engine.
Right, and that's going to be an O10 brass type, something like that?
Yeah, so what I'm going to do, there's already a little indentation on the end of this. So I have a number 78 drill, and I'm just going to drill into that. Now that I drilled the hole, I'm going to glue the small piece to the larger piece.
I remember seeing this in some other detailing locomotives videos that we've done, I think on the DVD series that we did. It's kind of a tedious and small process. You have to be really careful because all these little parts are easy to lose.
Yeah, if you notice, I put this in at a slight angle.
Yes, I did notice that. I wondered about it.
Yeah, that's this again, prototype photos. The engine that I'm modeling, that's the way it is. And this is something that can vary from unit to unit, so it is something to pay attention to. Okay, so I've bent a little piece of O12 brass wire, and that becomes the cable. Now, I think on the real engine, these actually extend up into the cab or somewhere. On mine, I just bent it and glued it to the top of the truck.
Okay.
Because, on models, you have to make some allowances.
What, you're not going to run that up into the cab?
No, because, I do want the engine to actually be able to go around curves and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put sander brackets on because they would be under the steps. And one, they'd be hard to see. And two, I think they might interfere with the engine's ability to go around curves.
That would be bad.
Right. However, I did notice that in the process of me detailing this truck, that I broke one of the little shock absorber things. If that's what they are, I'm not sure what they really are, but they look kind of like a little shock absorber. It kind of goes here.
Yeah, I can see that the one on the top has it.
Yeah, this is one of the side frames that isn't broken. Mm-hmm. This is actually a pretty common thing I've noticed on these Athearn side frames. These little pieces here are kind of fragile, and if they get pushed up, they can snap. And this one just completely disintegrated. So I need to fix that. I'm going to make a new shock absorber. I'm just calling it a shock absorber. If somebody out there who really knows what it is wants to tell me that it's something else, that's fine. But I think everyone will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, anyway. send that to hate mail at TSG.
No, actually, I really would like to know if it's called something else. But it looks like a shock absorber, so that's what I'm going to call it.
I'll tell you something, Dan, and I'm not even kidding. I know I kid a lot. Yeah. I know I joke all the time, but I'm not kidding about this. Somebody out there does know, and somebody out there probably will tell you what it is, because we have probably the best viewers in the entire of YouTube.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how many things I found out from our viewers, and I'm not joking at all. So
yeah.
So if whoever is going to answer, just go ahead and type it in the comments, because I'd like to know what it is too now.
Yeah. So anyway, what I have here, this is some 3/64 inch tubing from Special Shapes.
Okay. It sounds like a weight loss place.
Yeah. And this is just some O28 brass wire, and they should fit inside each other.
Okay.
And they're just about the right sizes to match what's molded on the other trucks. So I'm going to start with the O28 brass wire, and I have some smooth jawed pliers. And the reason I'm using smooth jawed is because I don't want to leave marks. And I'm going to flatten the end of this.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that give it a gluing surface?
Yeah, but I'm going to actually drill a little hole in this, which is a little bit tricky because the drill tends to want to wander.
Oh, we'll do that off camera.
Yeah. So now I have this flat thing on the end with a hole in it.
Right.
And I've cut a piece of the tubing using one of the undamaged side frames as a guide for length.
Okay.
And I'm going to slip this onto here.
Man, I need a microscope to see this stuff. Jeez.
Like that.
Okay.
And I'll secure it with a little bit of glue. Now that I've got this on, I can flatten the other end. I'm just wanting to make sure that it's in the same plane.
So the flattened part really was just to hold the bigger piece on there when you glued it?
No, this is part of what it looks like. This is part of what this part looks like. It really does look like a shock absorber. You've seen shock absorbers on cars where they have a little thing on the end. And
it's a little piston thing.
Yeah. And they have a little loop kind of so you can attach it to something. Mm-hmm. That's basically what I'm making.
Huh. Yeah, no, and it does look like that.
Yeah.
A really small one.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the finished part.
Dude, I'm looking at this like... You might not realize how good this really looks because it's blown up in the picture, and it's just like, it really looks like a little, shock absorber. Like he went down to the auto parts store and used a shrink ray on it or something.
Yeah. Of course, it's not functional, but, I did also round the edges with a file a little bit, so it makes it look a little nicer.
So, but here's a question though. There must be some flat pieces on the side frame, right? That it's going to glue to?
Well, that's what I'm getting to.
Oh, okay.
I should mention maybe that this is kind of an improvisation on my part. I didn't know I was going to break this thing, and I didn't know how I was going to fix it until a little while ago.
So you've never done this before?
No.
So you have to think on your feet, people.
Yeah. So what I need to do now is to even out this area so I have something to mount. I want to keep these little prongs because those are part of the truck side frame on the real thing, I believe. So I just need to cut off a little bit on right on the ends.
Is that to create a gluing surface for the part you made?
Right. Now that I'm looking at it, I suspect this has something to do with the brakes because of these cylinders, or this thing that looks kind of like a shock absorber is attached to the brakes.
Maybe it's a brake piston.
That's very possible.
Sounds official, Dan.
Yeah. Now, because this is just glued on, I decided to go one step further. And I already did this side over here, but now I'm going to do this side. I'm going to drill a hole through the hole that's in the part and on through the truck. So I've put a piece of 010 wire through the hole that I drilled, and I've left just a small amount sticking out the front to simulate the fastener that would be on the real part.
Sure, that would be like a bolt or something.
Yeah. And then I'll just secure the whole thing with some CA glue from the back mostly and the bottom so I don't get, glue mess on the rest of it. And then once that's dry, I can just nip off the excess wire in the back. Okay, so now it's really finished.
There it is.
Yeah. And I think those little studs that I put in should make it more durable too. Because in case it gets bumped or something, it won't just fall off because it's got something sticking through it.
That was the whole idea, right?
Right. So that pretty much finishes the side frames. All that's left is painting.
They look nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Very, very detailed.
Yeah, I think that's probably also a good place to stop for now, and we'll pick up the build again next time.
That sounds good, too. I'm getting hungry, Dan.
Okay.
I'll talk to you later.
Bye.